For 22 years, Stuart Sanderson has served as the president and chief operating officer of the Colorado Mining Association until recently retiring just a couple months ago. Stuart graduated from the American University's Washington College of Law in 1976 and was admitted to practice in 3 states and several federal courts, including the United States Supreme Court. He received his BA degree in political science from the University of Rochester in 1973. The Colorado Mining Association was established when our state was established in 1876, 140 years ago. It's a trade association of more than 1,000 members, including producers of coal, metals, uranium, agricultural and industrial minerals, service providers and suppliers. CMA serves as the advocate for responsible development and use of our state's mineral resources. Mining accounts for more than $8.8 billion in revenue for Colorado and more than 73,000 jobs. CMA more than doubled the size of the organization in his 22 years of leadership. Stuart is a nationally recognized spokesman for the Colorado mining industry, authored many guest editorials and letters that have appeared in the Denver Post, Wall Street Journal, and other publications. He's appeared frequently on radio and television news programs, including Colorado Public Radio, the PBS NewsHour, Comcast Television. In Colorado, he has led the effort to enact laws and regulations promoting environmentally sustainable and responsible development using the latest technologies. With him is the new president of the association, Steve Dempsey. Steve and I, and probably Polly too, Stan Dempsey and I go back with Polly, 20 years, 25 years? Yeah, maybe 30. He's been around a long time now. He's the new president. And he was the former head of the Colorado Petroleum Association for almost 18 years. Stan is a registered lobbyist and experienced advocate of the industry. Prior to the Colorado Petroleum Association, he was the Director of Government Affairs for the Colorado Association of Commerce and Industry from 1990 to 1998. He received his Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the University of Colorado in Denver. So please join me in welcoming Stuart Sanderson, who will then introduce Stan. Stuart, welcome.
Right there.
Want me here?
Either way.
I'll sit. Here.
We didn't work
Yeah,
that out.
that's all right. Well, great. Well, thanks for having us this evening. I'm going to drop my water down here. I'm Stuart Sanderson. I'm the old guy, and having just retired at the end of September from after 22 years of service to Colorado's mining industry. And I'm very pleased to have with me this evening, and the first time we're introducing to a public group, Stan Dempsey, the new president of the Colorado Mining Association. We are really pleased to have Stan, to have his experience. He has a great background in connection with the Colorado legislature, a great background not just in mining, but in oil and gas as well. And Stan, would you like to say a few words at the present time?
Certainly, and thank you, Stuart. It's really exciting to be here tonight and to participate in this dialogue. I am a Colorado native. I was born in Boulder, but in the mining tradition, I quickly moved to Leadville of course, I didn't have that choice. But I grew up in a mining family. My father was a young lawyer with the Climax Molybdenum Company as the Climax mine was continuing to be enlarged, and he was active in the build out of the Henderson mine. And so throughout my years in growing up in Colorado, I experienced the mining industry literally at the dinner table. I got to see the first severance tax enacted. I watched the trials of the Mount Emmons project in Crested Butte. So, in some ways, my professional background began as a child. And my interest in representing the Colorado Mining Association evolves from having participated in the public policy debates generally on behalf of the business community. And I focused, I think I did education, but really evolved into the environmental policy for the state of Colorado in representing the business community, and then from there, Colorado's oil and gas industry. And in that position with the Colorado Petroleum Association, really had a wonderful view of an industry that really grew in Colorado. In fact, it exploded. And we don't like to say those words well, we say it in mining. We don't like to say it in oil and gas. But the fact is that I had a really wonderful opportunity to participate in the big policy debates in oil and gas, the nation's first hydraulic fracturing disclosure rule, participating in the development of the air quality rules that govern Colorado, and had some big controversies, including whether or not Colorado should adopt statutes on local control, a big ballot fight involving severance tax, which I was able to draw history from back in the 70s to bring that history for our advocacy on the ballot issue. So when Stuart announced his retirement in March, it was very easy for me to say, hey, I've been doing oil and gas work for 17 years. This is really a wonderful opportunity to represent an industry so important to me, my family, but more importantly to the state of Colorado. And so I'm looking forward to my tenure at Colorado Mining Association. One of the things, and you'll be able to tell, I'm very fortunate to have a predecessor in Stuart. And when you hear his presentation, you'll know why the board of directors of the Colorado Mining Association encouraged and directed us to have an extensive transition period, a period in which most executives don't have that opportunity. And you'll see why Stuart is such an asset to the state of Colorado and to our industry. And Stuart, thank you for a successful transition. We're still transitioning in some ways.
That's right. That's
We're
right.
still finding 1 or 2 accounts to transition every day.
That's right.
But thank you all very much. And Stuart, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Well, I'm hoping to drag this transition out as long as possible because
Absolutely.
I'm a consultant now. So, well, I really appreciate having the opportunity, Stan and I both do, to appear before this group. This is a great turnout, a great crowd. And however, John's introduction, after reciting the really prominent, outstanding speakers that you've had here before, Dick Monfort, Hank Brown, former senator, I mean, there's absolutely no pressure on me this evening, right?
No.
So, I represent, Stan and I represent really Colorado's oldest industry, Colorado's first industry. And the Colorado Mining Association, if we can go to the next slide, was founded in the year that Colorado became the centennial state. And the organization was incorporated in 1897. And you know you're getting old when your centennial celebration is now 20 years in the rear view mirror. We have over 850 members, including individuals as well as organizations that are engaged in the production of coal, minerals, agricultural minerals, and the like, as well as those vendors, manufacturers, and other service providers to the mining industry. We have about 168 companies right now that represent, that are members of the organization. In addition to having a very active resident mineral extraction industry, Colorado, and this is not an overstatement, I believe is the mining capital of the world. It is the infrastructure for worldwide, it is a launch pad for worldwide mineral development. It is, of course, the Colorado School of Mines was founded in 1874. The 2 years before our organization was founded, it is the preeminent mining institution, higher learning in the country. Denver is an infrastructure of expertise that applies its expertise and has operations all over the world. You can name a country and there is a mining company or a vendor or a service provider who is there. Even countries like Afghanistan, which of course has great mineral wealth. Our city is also headquarters to hundreds of companies that are mining worldwide, so we also represent those organizations as well. We exist for the purpose of trying to build business relationships, to educate the public about mining, and of course to serve as the industry's voice before the legislature, before the Congress, before the regulatory agencies, and where necessary before the courts. Mining actually accounts for roughly 70,000 jobs, produces billions in revenue for the state of Colorado in terms of contributions to gross domestic product. We're a very capital-intensive industry, so we purchase machinery, we purchase equipment, but we also require a significant amount of human expertise. In addition to the mine workers, a very professional, very highly trained workforce, and one that earns top wages and benefits among all industrial workers. We need and have environmental specialists, those who specialize in health and safety, those who engage in a variety of specialized functions for our mining operations. Thus, there is a great multiplier effect in terms of contributions to the general economy. Although mineral extraction is relatively small in terms of its environmental footprint in Colorado, we have 7 or 8 coal mining operations, we have 1 gold mine, we have 2 molybdenum mines, and a few others. Our economic input and impact is very, very great. In addition, we've had some good news lately. The leading U.S. gold producer, Newmont Mining Corporation, recently in the last year acquired the Cripple Creek and Victor gold mine, which is the state's leading gold producer. And the mine there is roughly doubling production from around 200,000 ounces a year to nearly 400,000 ounces. So that mine is really an anchor of the economy in Teller County and a great contributor to the economy there. I'd just like to kind of go through the location of the major mines in Colorado. We're going to click on the first one, with limestone mineral quarry. Wholesome operates the Portland Quarry plant down in Fremont County, and this operation, it produces limestone, of course, which is used in cement and other products. Next. We are a major producer of gypsum. You live in a house, you live in an apartment, your wallboard comes from gypsum, and the American Gypsum Company produces there. Nahcolite. Now, when I first saw this, I mispronounced it. I think I called it Naugahyde. But Nahcolite is, we have virtually the only significant deposits of pure sodium bicarbonate. Yes, sodium bicarbonate, it's a mineral, you mine it, and that is located in the western slope, I believe in Garfield County. We were the 10th leading producer of coal in 2015. Unfortunately, our ranking has dropped since then, in part because of the government initiatives that have impacted coal use. The next slide, I mentioned we are the 4th leading gold producer in the United States, and we are also the leading #1 producer of molybdenum, which is produced from the Henderson and Climax mines, which are located in Clear Creek County on the way up through Empire, on the way to up Berthoud Pass, and the Climax mine, which is reopened after a nearly 20-year hiatus in 2012, and that mine, of course, is a surface mine located in Lake County. That is basically the location of the major mines in Colorado. If we can move to the next slide, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the mineral uses. You know, we talk a lot and we're very concerned. We work to try to minimize mining's impact on the environment. We work to try to make sure that mining operations take care of the environment from their inception to their conclusion. But mineral products are also essential to helping to ensure the protection of the environment. And in addition to the industrial uses of molybdenum, which I've shown here, they are stainless alloy steels, primarily used in automobile parts and other industrial uses. Molybdenum also refines and removes sulfur from petroleum products. It is used, of course, in a variety of health applications, labs, and hospital equipment and parts. It's the heat sink in your computer. It's used in toothpaste. It's a lubricant. The minerals are very, very slippery, and if you grind it up, it almost forms a little bit of a paste. It's a silvery kind of paste. It's an excellent lubricant. And as I mentioned, we ranked first in the production of moly. It is also used in solar cells, photovoltaics, flat panel displays, a variety of uses. Next slide. We also produce gold. Now, gold, of course, significant use for currency, jewelry. It's a store of value in many countries. It's also used in medicine and dentistry. In cell phones and MP3 players were a little behind in my slide as far as technology is concerned, and automobile airbag control panels. So the gold is an important mineral for a variety of uses, and we also produce silver as a byproduct, which is used in renewable energy. Next slide. Gypsum, used in wallboard and plaster products, glass making, and of course the demand is increasing with the recovery in the housing market, mined in Colorado. And limestone, which we mentioned before. In addition to its use, obviously, in cement and building products, it's used in industrial air filters to remove sulfur from exhaust gases. It's used in water treatment and filtration, and about 1,200 tons of reinforced concrete are required for the pads that are used in wind towers. So, mineral products are essential to various environmental applications. Next slide. Nahcolite, pure sodium bicarbonate. It is used in animal feed. As the mine manager there at the operation told me, he said it's basically Alka-Seltzer for cows, if you think about it. Used, of course, in baking soda, toothpaste, and our production will increase substantially with the development of that operation and the increase in demand for that product. I think you're beginning to hopefully develop an appreciation, understanding that mineral products are in everything virtually that we use every day. It's an old saying that if it can't be grown, it has to be mined. And I would say that is largely true. Our life would be very different without mining. Okay, a controversial subject, coal. Coal is one of the major products that has been produced in Colorado. We have been mining coal in Colorado since 1864. It accounts for about 52% of Colorado's electricity. It is very low in sulfur. It is a very clean coal product, but it is very high in BTU, or energy content. Thus, it is a coal that is finding demand in world markets. Our coal mine workers earn average wages and benefits approaching nearly $135,000 a year. And because the mines are located primarily in northwest and in south central Colorado, that is in northwest Colorado, Moffett, Routt, Rio Blanco counties, in southwestern Colorado, in La Plata County, but of course in Delta and Gunnison counties as well. It is an anchor of rural economies. It is very, very difficult to find jobs that pay this amount, and there is a real human factor in terms of securing not only the economies, but in providing livelihoods and a decent standard of living for the workers in those areas. Our state, we also pay about $44 million a year in royalties to the federal government because the bulk of our coal is produced on federal leases. That is, we have to lease the property, the land, the coal reserves from the federal government, and we mine that coal and we pay a royalty that is set either at 12.5% or 8% generally. Those are the statutory rates for coal that is produced by surface and by underground mining methods, respectively. We were 10th among the states. We've fallen to 14th or perhaps a little bit lower, in part because of some of the regulatory initiatives. I'm not going to dwell on those too much tonight, but one of the things that we in the business community know is the impact that government can have upon our daily lives. That impact can be either positive or it can be negative. In recent years, this has been negative. And let me say, to some extent, this isn't just a Democrat issue. There has been a bipartisan concern as well. Let's move on to the next slide. Key competitive advantage. Coal-dependent states tend to pay lower rates. Colorado pays, I think, a little above 9 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. The states that you see in green here tend to derive the bulk or a significant part of their energy, their electricity, from coal. The states that, of course, up here in the upper corner are hydro, and then in the West Coast, California, and the Northeast, which are not as dependent upon coal, they pay significantly higher electricity rates. As someone who used to own a house in the great state of Maine, I know that you can see $700 a month or more electricity bills, and it wasn't that big a house. Next slide. Perception versus reality. 8 of the 10 most polluted cities are in a state that has 0 coal plants, and that's California. Our industry is actually very highly regulated. And remember, we sell, we purchase, we mine, and we produce the coal, and we sell it in markets to utilities. And it's important to know that there are 2 kinds of markets for coal. One is metallurgical or met coal. Currently, there is no met coal production which is used in steel making in Colorado. All of our coal is thermal, which means it's used to generate electricity. So there is an issue. Of course, the power plants are required to meet very stringent standards under the Clean Air Act. We can move on to the next slide. I will talk about some of the progress that has been made in the last several decades. Notwithstanding the fact that through before 2010, between the 1970s and into the first decade of the new millennium, coal use for electricity generation increased substantially. And it nearly tripled during that period of time. Notwithstanding the fact, the emissions from coal-fired power plants of criteria pollutants dropped by nearly 90%. And this is in part, we have regulations that we comply with, that the power plants must comply with, but also to the use of cleaner fuels and the development and deployment of really significant clean coal technologies. If you go to northwest Colorado and you stand at the Trapper Mine next to the Craig plant, the sky is blue, the sky is clear, and we take that obligation very seriously. If we can move on to the next plant, I want to talk about, though, the climate issue a little bit. The question is, in the policy context, in the policy arena, I know that there are differing opinions over the whole question of climate change and global warming. I'm not going to get into those discussions. I'm only going to talk about the policy choices that our government is making, and you can decide from there. The EPA carbon plant rules have had, even the threat of those have had a significant effect on coal production. The rules that were proposed by the Environmental Protection Agency were the most expensive at the time of their issuance in the history of the Clean Air Act. In fact, the cost of those regulations, about over $50 billion, dwarfed anything, and it actually exceeded the cost of all regulations under the Clean Air Act that had been adopted before that time. The emissions cuts would have no benefit, and the EPA admits that the rules will have no impact on global temperatures. The rules became final last year, in part, and we believed it was defiance of Congress. They will have a devastating impact on Colorado if they are upheld by the courts. And that impact could result in 28% increases in wholesale electricity rates in the peak years. They basically require a more than 30% cut in emissions of carbon dioxide, and these emissions, there's no real regard to the costs of this. It will also restructure the whole system of electricity generation in the country. It makes assumptions about the extent to which states will bring on new renewable energy power. It is essentially a takeover of the electricity grid in our view. Now, there are obviously different views about that as well. The regulations are currently on hold, thanks in part to litigation that was initiated by several states, including the state of Colorado. There was a controversy because, of course, the governor, in fairness, and the attorney general have differing opinions on the Clean Power Plan. Back in February, the U.S. Supreme Court stayed the effect of the rule, in fact, granted an injunction. And that injunction will last until the conclusion of the litigation. Well, needless to say, tragically, the death of Justice Scalia. If you could move that back, I'm not ready to move forward. I'd appreciate it if you could just hold that for a minute. Justice Scalia died. He left the court at a 4-4 margin. Needless to say, we'll talk about the elections a little bit. The elections will have a significant impact on the composition of the court and will certainly influence the outcome of this particular proceeding. Next slide. Thank you. But a lot of the damage has been done to coal before the EPA regulations became final. I would like to talk about the Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act, which ordered basically the shutdown of 1,000 megawatts of coal generation along the Front Range, significant coal power along the Front Range. And interestingly enough, that was a government-mandated shutdown of those plants or their conversion to higher-cost energy sources without regard, and even well before the plant's scheduled retirement dates. So we were in effect replacing a Chevrolet with a much more expensive vehicle. There will be cost increases that are associated with that. Mandates for renewable energy. Obviously, we believe in an all-of-the-above energy source. After all, our industry sells mineral products that are used in the deployment of renewable energy technologies, wind and solar. But the fact is, the question is whether government should be mandating this. Government has issued mandates. There is currently a standard that investor-owned utilities like Xcel Energy generate 30% of their electricity from renewables and by a certain date, and electric cooperatives like Tri-State must generate 20%. The Secretary of the Interior has issued moratoriums on federal coal leasing without regard to any impact on the environment or the economy. We have the governor's draft executive order on carbon emissions. These are all major concerns for us, and we will be working as constructively as we can going forward, keeping in mind that we continue to produce a clean, high-quality product, but our future is very guarded due largely to government regulation. Well, ending that, I'm not afraid to take on some tough issues here. The Animas River spill. Everybody awoke in August of 2015 to the headlines and to the news stories, which were on all of the major networks, worldwide coverage of the Animas River spill from the Gold King mine. This was caused by an EPA contractor that was conducting some site reclamation work in the course of trying to remove from some overburden at the entrance of an old abandoned mine that was operated well before Colorado developed modern standards. They triggered a breach, and of course the rest is history. I think it's important to distinguish between modern mining and the mining that took place here. This mine was developed primarily between 1890 and 1920. That was the dark ages of environmental regulation, and there were no environmental rules that were in effect. Needless to say, that's very different from the way that we conduct our operations today. The Animas River was closed to recreation, irrigation, and other uses, and then it was reopened. A water treatment facility was installed and to begin to get control of it, and then, if we can move to the next slide, the water quality was basically restored, although I think it's fair to say that there are still very long-term concerns about the quality of the water that is there. This, of course, is a picture of our governor drinking water from the river a week or two after the flood. The state was on there immediately, and at least the sludge that was released was the water was restored within a fairly short period of time thereafter, at least for the purposes of reopening for recreation and normal uses. Well, what was our response? Needless to say, I was getting calls from the National Review, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Denver Post, and for interviews, and we knew that we needed to step forward. Our first goal was to provide accurate information. In addition, of course, to offering any assistance, technical expertise, or other, EPA doesn't really have any or many mining engineers on staff. we also sought to point out that modern mining is regulated by literally dozens of laws and hundreds of regulations, and that this was not indicative of the robust standards that apply to modern mining activities. And since the laws were amended and upgraded in 1992, there have been no major incidents associated with the mines that are active in this state. I probably addressed, I don't know, maybe 50 civic groups and others in the immediate aftermath of this. But we also sought to make a couple of points in the legislative arena. And one of those was the need that government alone can't provide the solutions. We believe that the business community and that conservation groups, that even mining companies can play a role in cleaning up and addressing the liabilities and the issues that are associated with Colorado's history of abandoned mines. And we actually have many good examples of that where companies like Freeport-McMoRan have gone out and they have engaged in partnerships with environmental groups. At one time this was thought impossible. And when I say environmental groups, I mean groups like Trout Unlimited. And we will have a presentation by those groups at our conference next year. Those in an effort to just try to clean up the sites and to improve the environmental conditions. But Congress, the laws, they restrict the ability of companies to get in and do this by imposing a sort of perpetual liability. You touch it, you buy it. You don't just assume liability for any activities that you performed at that site or engaged in. The company is liable for all pre-existing conditions. And we believe that something needs to be done there. It would be better to get some reclamation, to get some site remediation and environmental remediation in place rather than leaving these sites out there. Next slide. Needless to say, the mining industry has reclaimed over 2.7 million acres of land in the last 30 years. We have turned these lands into recreation areas, economic development parks, farms, golf courses, housing developments, wildlife refuges, and the like. One of our coal mines, the Trapper Mine in northwest Colorado, was cited, received recognition as one of the top 3 examples of environmental achievement in America in the entire 30-year history at the time of the federal modern surface mining laws, which regulate the environmental aspects of and the impacts from coal mining. We also have developed at the Colorado Mining Association a pollution prevention program, environmental stewardship, where we encourage companies to go out and tell us about what they are doing, not just simply in terms of protecting the environment, but recycling and repurposing, because of course we use a lot of products, tires and the like in our mining operations. This is one at the Cripple Creek and Victor mine from a few years ago. And community development projects. Mines, unlike other forms of resource development, you open a mine, you just don't go in and one day and then you're out a year later. Mines operate over the long term, and mine will typically last anywhere from 30 to 40 to 50 years or longer. The oldest mine in operation now, the Climax mine, began operations in 1918. So these mines necessarily must become a part of the community. They must obtain the social license to operate. And this is just one example, the Trapper Mine in northwest Colorado, contribution of athletic and fitness centers that were donated to Colorado Northwest Community College. That mine is built. Golf courses. This is not the exception, this is the rule in active mining operations. With that, I am going to conclude my presentation. I'm going to ask if Stan has any concluding words, because he's going to have to take this organization forward in some very, very challenging conditions. So I'm going to let you do the conclusion.
Well, can you see what a big challenge it is to replace Stuart in terms of his ability to communicate so much good information about such an important industry in Colorado? And I've been sitting here trying to say, well, how am I going to memorize this presentation? But the fact is that this is an industry that has contributed to Colorado since inception of statehood, and it's a very exciting industry. We have big challenges. We have political challenges. We have operational challenges. And yet we are an industry that is looking to the future to be able to participate in Colorado's economy. I think one of the biggest challenges we have, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak today, is to get the word out about the industry and to talk about the contributions that we make. So we appreciate very much the opportunity to speak. And Stuart, congratulations on your very successful career in not only building a wonderful organization to represent Colorado's mining industry, the communities that we serve, but appreciate all that you did. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me this evening and having us. Thanks. And we'd be happy to, I've been told that I should ask for questions from the audience. So I'm happy to try to answer those.
Sounds good.
One of the things we usually do when Brian is here, just
Okay.
keeping with his spirit, is he always does a couple of takeaway golden nuggets. And I think, Stan, you first?
Certainly.
Oh, thanks. I probably don't need this. I have a New York voice. You said your introduction to the industry started at home. And I think some of the people that we've had as speakers tell that very same story,
Sure.
that they followed in the footsteps of something that was in their family that they actually just by osmosis knew about. So I think that's very intriguing. Colorado being the mining capital of the world, I have a home in Silverthorne. I drive to Summit County on a very regular basis. And, you know, I always think about what is the history as, you know, once you get past Evergreen and you see all of those great places on the side of the road. I don't think very many of us understand how big of a contribution it is to our state economy. We always think, you know, skiing is bringing in all the money. The most important thing that I heard tonight was, if it can't be grown, it has to be mined. So if anybody has questions, please, by all means, go ahead.
Okay.
Speak to the clean coal challenge and potentially some of the fracking issues that we keep hearing all this stuff about.
Can I speak to the clean? I believe the question was, can I speak to the clean coal challenge? Yes. You know, we're needless to say, we're facing a real challenge moving forward. At the same time, the world is, while it's diversifying its energy mix, it's also recognizing the importance of coal, and thus, for many years, coal was one of the fastest and leading forms of mineral development, particularly in the developing world, for economies and for countries that are seeking to, of course, improve their standard of living. Now, the important thing is that it must be done cleanly, it must be done in a way that serves local communities, and it must be done in a way that protects the environment. And thus, I think that I am excited about clean coal technology deployment throughout the world. We can continue to improve the way that we generate electricity from coal, and that means supercritical coal technologies, which involve heating the product to a very, very high temperature, can not only produce a product more efficiently, but it can significantly reduce emissions, including carbon emissions. There are supercritical technologies that are in use at the Pueblo plant here in Colorado that's operated by Xcel Energy. But those technologies are also growing worldwide, and even in a country like China, which does not have a good environmental track record, we're seeing clean coal technologies being deployed there as well. That is what I think is the direction that we are going to have to take in order to ensure a role for coal in the energy mix.
So clean coal is not an oxymoron. You can't produce energy much more cleanly.
We can, and I think we have. I think we have a track record in terms of taking care of the criteria pollutants from the generation of coal, not to mention other fossil fuels. And I think that it's continuing to take time in connection with carbon, but I think that we have to be realistic about that as well. The United States produces about 4% of the man-made emissions. U.S. coal-fired power plants account for about 4% of the man-made emissions worldwide. it's also time that the rest of the world is going to have to step up if there's going to be any kind of significant reduction. Otherwise, anything that we do here isn't going to have meaning. And we need to balance the harm to the economy, to balance the environment, the economic impacts with what we can actually achieve in terms of improving the environment. Yes, sir.
Are there any opportunities to export clean coal to other countries from Colorado?
There are, but there are tremendous costs that are associated with the export of Colorado coal. And one thing that has made me, I've been a little discouraged by, has been the fact that our export markets, even within the United States, have declined. And so we have become much more reliant upon the markets that exist in Colorado and Utah, and this is as coal production has declined.
Stuart, I'll just add to that. One of the things that you can see both with coal and oil and gas, there's a tremendous interest to export natural gas, particularly from the western slope of Colorado. There's a concerted effort by the environmental community to shut down or to prohibit the ports in places like Portland and Oakland and other places to prohibit those exports. And that's one of the, and of course that hurts this country's GDP and this country's trade balance. And so, you know, those are the issues that not only getting the product to those export ports, but also just the effort to shut those down.
So there are costs, transportation costs associated with, of course, taking it to markets, say, in the Pacific Rim or elsewhere, but also the opposition that we face, not to mention the absence of export terminal capacity. Now, we are exporting some coal to overseas markets, but I believe that it's a small percentage of overall production in the U.S.
Follow up?
Yes.
Mr. Professor, what developing nations don't have the coal resources that are there developing nations like China, India, maybe parts of Africa that don't have coal mining any resources for coal that we could export?
Well, there is some coal mining, of course, in those countries. I believe China's a leading coal producer, but of course its reserves are not quite what we have. I have a slide I did not include tonight. We have 27% of the world's coal here in the United States. We have more reserves, equivalent energy units, than all of the oil in the Middle East. And so there is the potential. But we're finding that in addition to the developing world, they have access to export coals, but they all are coals which they import. They also, of course, there's coal that's produced. Australia is a major coal producer. Indonesia is a major coal producer. China and the like. But there are coal markets, for example, in Europe, in Germany, and others as they seek to provide. The advantage of coal use is that it's affordable. It is one of the lowest. It is the most affordable source of electricity in our view than any other source that is out there. Secondly, it is extremely reliable in the sense that the coal-fired power plants are capable of running all the time. They meet and provide baseload demand. They meet baseload demand requirements, and so that's why it's so important. Yes, ma'am. Yep.
So what is the industry doing to shift the perception about coal?
Well, the industry has engaged in in advertising campaigns. It is working through social media to try to enhance coal's image. I have to say that we've been playing a lot of defense lately, just keeping the operations going. And I will say that historically, we have not done enough. And I know the Colorado Mining Association launched in 2008 through 2011 the first advertising campaign about mining, and those ads aired during Colorado Rockies games. The industry needs to do more of that to try to raise public awareness. Because I've often told coal executives and others that if we don't get out there and tell our story, others are going to tell it for us, and it's not going to have a happy outcome. Yes, sir.
You're obviously very passionate about coal and very knowledgeable about the
EPA regulations and conversions of gas or coal power plants to natural gas. So I guess someone who's worked in both mining and oil and gas, and keeping with the spirit of the Opportunity Coalition, how have you guys, CMA, been able to work with groups like COGA? Well, obviously, Colorado Oil and Gas Association, who are probably on the same side of the aisle, but have different goals for stuff like conversion of the power plants.
Answer that?
I'm happy to answer that because I, 3 months ago, came from the oil and gas industry. I was president of the Colorado Petroleum Association, which was different than COGA. We did not get into the battle between coal and gas. I always like to tell the funny story that my board member is one of them who came from Wyoming, said, "You think I'm going to get in a fight between the coal industry and the gas industry and go back home and to Wyoming, where coal is such a big producer?" And obviously the answer is no. You know, certainly, and when I began my career in oil and gas, there was a very aggressive pitch to force a fight with the coal industry to try to build those gas markets for electric generation. And those fights have occurred, and you know, in 2010, Colorado adopted Clean Air, Clean Jobs, which was a victory for the natural gas for parts of the natural gas industry. It's important to remember the oil and gas industry is not completely united on these issues. And so the fact there was a battle and they succeeded. But I think what's happened, if you look at, you know, you had Audrey McLennan from Chesapeake Energy who put an ad in the Wall Street Journal talking about the black face of coal and you know, really helped lead that fight. Well, Chesapeake's almost is out of business essentially. And I won't talk about Audrey, but the fact is that the environmental community has started to wage the same war against natural gas. In fact, you know, Oil and Gas Accountability Project in La Plata County talks about oil and gas, or particularly natural gas, being another dirty fossil fuel. And so what the industry in Colorado, as far as I can tell, is realizing that the same folks who were suing every federal leasing action in Northwest Colorado, and I know the lawyers who do the litigation, they're doing the same thing to oil and gas. And I'll just give you an example. When the governor was floating this idea of an executive order on further carbon reductions, the oil and gas industry reached out to us and said, A, we don't want to have a fight with you. B, those reductions are going to hit us too in our future goals. So right now, and I'm fortunate because of my background to know that industry pretty well, they're aligned with us because they see the same thing happening to them that's happened to us.
Yes, sir.
Why are they trying to shut down the ports to export gas?
Because they want to shut down coal and they want to shut down natural gas.
They want to keep it in the ground.
Thank you, Polly. And Polly, you know better than anybody else, being a former commissioner.
How about you, sir?
So what's the status of the Climax mine?
What was the?
What's the status of the Climax mine?
The Climax mine. The Climax mine is open and it's in operation, and it will continue operations. I think that's the future of moly mining in Colorado. I'd like to see higher prices, but wouldn't we all for what we're selling? Yes, sir.
During and after the Gold King mine spill, there was speculation that it was intended so that the EPA could declare a superfund. I believe the EPA has now declared a superfund. How does that affect your organization or mining in Colorado?
I believe the question was there was some speculation that EPA might have intentionally caused the Gold King spill?
And to get the Superfund designation.
And to get the Superfund designation. Well, I don't think that I don't think there's any evidence of intention there. I think that this was more a matter of mismanagement than anything else, although I was asked that very question in a couple of talk radio shows. And it is, obviously the site is in a Superfund designation. We hope that they will hire contractors that will get the job done and improve, and we are hoping that one day the logjam over the Good Samaritan legislation will also be broken, and that will have some opportunity there.
You know,
I know it looks suspiciously convenient, but I think EPA and the EPA contractors, they would be taking a massive chance if they did anything.
And I'm really
intentionally.
sorry I made Stuart take the word mismanagement out of that slide.
Yeah.
We were trying to be fairly neutral in the treatment of EPA, but
Well,
I think you were right.
It was mismanagement. I mean, they should have gone in. They should have gone in and tested the water levels from above. They didn't do it, and they disturbed the area that was not stable, and the spill happened. Now, there's no question that there are a lot of factors that are being cited. I'm not capable of citing or apportioning blame, but I'm sure that EPA would like to have had August 5th back as well, and would have done it a different way had they had a second opportunity. Yes, sir.
So, as someone who coincidentally took his MSHA refresher this past Monday, I think it would be worthwhile to this group to hear your perspective on first what MSHA is, maybe how they've advanced and made major strides over the years in saving lives and improving the health and safety of workers on the mines. And lastly, maybe touch on how safety actually, in a business manner, one common component of every successful modern mine today is actually a good safety program, which is governed by MSHA.
Well, the MSHA stands for the Mine Safety and Health Administration. Mine Safety and Health Act was passed over 40 years ago, and it is an exceptionally stringent regulation of mine safety. And I don't know if in your businesses, if you have inspectors who come out from the health department in the food business to inspect, or in other businesses. With respect to mine safety, there are mine inspectors who log more than 30 days a month at mines. I don't know how you get over 30 or 31 days a month, but they manage, the federal government manages to do it. Safety is a very important value. We send, thousands of miners into the mines and underground every day in Colorado. Last year, I believe there were no fatalities, fortunately. That's the only acceptable figure. Our incident rate and our accident rate are below and better than the national average here in Colorado. And I think the industry has made great strides and progress over the past several decades, punctuated by some really highly unfortunate tragedies that took place back in 2006 and 2007. I know I was answering the news media calls about that when they, when those calls came in. But I can tell you that I've worked in this industry. I've worked directly for the mining industry now for 28 years, and I don't think there's a value that they hold higher than mine safety. And the companies take it seriously because the workers are important. You can't get the product out of the ground unless you have a healthy workforce, unless you have a safe workforce. You've got to provide safe working conditions or your workers are not going to come back. It takes a lot of effort to train a miner to go underground in these environments and to bring the product out. And so that's part of, I think, what we see as an essential requirement. National Mining Association has a core safety program. We have the mines that have their own programs, and they're very stringently regulated at the federal level. And this is actually where we believe in the unified federal, the feds regulate mine safety. The state conducts training.
I'll just add a couple points.
Yeah.
We always have to plan a little bit early when we go see one of our members' facilities, because we've got to watch the safety video.
Right.
And I don't care how many times you've seen it, you got to watch it again. And number two, I'm learning in my new role to promote my conference, our conference, for the Colorado Mining Association. And one of the things that I think that we're most proud of is our partnership with the state of Colorado to promote mine safety through our safety awards and our kind of updating our members on the latest safety techniques, working with the state of Colorado and MSHA. So I just want to reemphasize. I mean, coming from the petroleum industry, safety is critical, and it's just the same thing with mining. So thank you.
Thanks. Yes, sir.
I have a question about political ramifications. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that? Judicial versus
About
just the political ramifications.
the political? Well, sure. The obviously what happens in the elections has can have a significant impact on the business community and on any industry. And we have certainly seen a significant shift in the last 15 years here in Colorado. I think one of the important things is, notwithstanding what may happen and which politician or which political party may do, we try, it's important for the industry to try to maintain, we are nonpartisan, and we try to maintain relationships on both sides of the political aisle. Now, I'll be the first to say that there are some elected leaders we get along with better than others, but we try to educate all of them about the importance of mining. It's been interesting to see what's happened because, of course, Colorado was this kind of solidly Republican state for so many years, and then the transformation took place. There are a variety of factors that are involved in that. I think one of the concerns I have, of course, is the role that money plays now in politics at all levels of the election. But that is a part of our current political scene, and it's a part of our current political framework. I also am concerned about the impact that out-of-state money can have in terms of ballot initiatives. We have seen ballot initiatives pass in Colorado, ranging from medical to medical marijuana and recreational marijuana and a variety of other things, which, by the way, creates safety issues for the workforce because we are a zero-tolerance industry as far as that is concerned, and we have sought to uphold those policies that protect our workers, and we have succeeded so far before the Colorado Supreme Court. But the elections this time, I think, are a real wild card. You have the top of the ticket. Obviously, we don't know what the down ballot impact is going to be. We may have our ideas about what may happen. We currently have, we did a shift from red to blue in Colorado and then kind of back to purple. Our legislature is divided now, and things have been fairly quiet over the last couple of years. But I think that we are monitoring what's going to happen and doing a lot of, how should we say it, handicapping, evaluating scenarios of what might occur in the year ahead, depending on the outcome.
And let me just add, Stuart said something very important. We're a nonpartisan organization. And the challenge we have, I think that you asked about what is the industry doing to get the word out about the benefits of this industry. We have that challenge in a microcosm in the state capitol. And, having worked in another extractive industry when there was one-party control in terms of in some very severe attacks on oil and gas, the fact is you communicate with every single legislator no matter what they say or believe. And I will tell you that we had tremendous success in oil and gas being able to beat down 3 or 4 horrible bills because we talked to every single legislator and we found 3 or 4, and I'm just going to say Democrats, who basically said, we're not going along with our side of the aisle because they had strong policy arguments, they had support of the governor to say no. And one of them happens to be running for Congress today, who cast the one vote that she cast on behalf of the industry. That was the only vote we needed all year long from her. But she cast the deciding vote to stop local governments from regulating at least the oil and gas industry. So my message here is, we certainly know what the dynamics are like, but we have to work with every single legislator every day to make sure they know the importance of the industry in Colorado.
Right. The thing that we are most concerned about is we are starting to see a sort of a prohibitionist mentality taking effect. And speaking generally, I have heard statements that concern me greatly about we're going to stop fossil fuel extraction on federal lands. Okay, so what are you going to do with the revenues that you lose? Revenues that not only support local and state governments, but that support the public school system in Colorado and other states which are reliant upon it. I think it's important that we try to educate candidates on the importance of mining. I think that there are candidates out in the presidential race that have advocated, Donald Trump, pro-coal. Hillary Clinton has said statements to the contrary about putting miners out of work, but putting government programs in place. What we're hoping is that whoever is elected is going to be more moderate in terms of and more realistic in their views toward fossil fuel extraction on federal lands and recognize the importance of mining and oil and gas development in Colorado and in the U.S.
Let's thank Stuart and Stan for